So forgive me, everybody. I have a little bit of a head cold, so I look like trash, and I'm just going to stay on off camera and just present the best that I can. I'm congested, if you can't tell, so I'll be okay. I'm going to make it. Don't worry, GMI. The show must go on in any case. So like, I'm just going to kind of power through this. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is John Paller. I'm the founder and chief executive steward of the Opolis Project. We've got our board of stewards and several of our founding stewards here as well. This is our annual community meeting as required by our cooperative statutes. You got it, John. Bufficorns for the win. I mean, obvious sort of egregious shill for ETHDenver, but we all fancy our Bufficorns here. So as much as they're not like the Opolis, branding, it's something that we love here. Okay, so the function of this meeting is basically there's statutory requirements in Colorado Cooperative Code that require that we have an annual meeting. We did not do one officially last year, so we're trying to get that back on track, and we're doing one now. We are discussing like what's the next cadence going to be, like when should we do this? Should it be at the end of the year? Should it be in person at something like ETHDenver? We'll come out with some conclusions on that at some point early next year. But for now, Eddie, if you wouldn't mind sharing the deck, that'd be great. All right, so typically these kind of meetings will include sort of like community updates and just sort of FYI information, new announcements, new initiatives, calls to action, things that are going to, potentially impact you as a community member. Now, we have already completed open enrollment. Yay. So we're not going to be going over any of the open enrollment components today. If you do have questions about any of that stuff coming up for 2023, then reach out to our support stewards. You can do so by emailing support@opolis.co. So without further ado, I'll just remind you of a couple of things here. We will talk about governance late in the presentation, but decision-making currently resides with the Board of Stewards. So that will continue, and we will, quote, begin to transition governance to the community, starting at 1,000 employee members. So in case you're wondering, if you haven't read the bylaws, if you haven't read the tokenomics recently, if you haven't read any of that, the reason we did that is because we just felt like the community needed to be more mature and have a good beat on like what are the appropriate decisions that various bodies. Hey, Michael, welcome. We wanted to make sure that we get it right. So defining all of the governance before you start, I think is like a really impossible thing to do. I've been around the DAO ecosystem, and I've been pontificating about DAO governance since 2018, 2017. So I'm glad that we did it this way, because had we done it where we tried to kind of anticipate everything up front in a fully decentralized manner right out the gate, I think we would have flopped big time. So it's exciting to see that things are starting to stage the way that they should. And ultimately, we can continue our growth trajectory as a community and actually get where we want to go, which is having a community-led, community-governed organization with some checks and balances that create sustainability, both in benevolence and economic vibrancy from within the walls of the community. So let's start with the State of the Union here. All right, this is like the tail of the tape. We've been growing. Good news, everybody. I've looked around at the crypto world in general. Now, keep in mind, we don't just service Web3 independent workers. Our product suits any independent worker. But because we started in crypto land, I'd say about 80% of our members are working in Web3 or around Web3 in some capacity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't be a good fit from a product standpoint for, man, we got a lot of people coming in. Is there a way I can mute that? I don't think so.
I just did.
Okay, great. Um, where was I? Talking about growth. Okay, so yeah, it's still going, Josh. Um, the um, the key thing here to note is what's really cool about our product is where I look around the crypto world and almost everybody's contracted that I can see in terms of volume, activity, community, so the metrics that in bull markets are going, number go up, have been coming down, right? So that's obviously expected in a downturn like we've been having. And if you want to track the downturn back, it really started in November of last year. So it's about a year ago that the official bear market would, I mean, if you want to look at the actual like pure definition of a bear market, that's when it started. I think you could argue that the official bear market didn't start till like May, June this year, but it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is like we've been growing consistently. Now, I'm going to get into why and how this growth was achieved. Is it good? I'm going to get into that too. Like, what do we want? Like, what are we trying to get for? Yeah. So somebody's pointing out here, 49 states. Yep, Arizona's the hanging participle. We're working on a workaround for Arizona. There's not a ton of demand in Arizona, but there has been some. But we're in every other state. So that's actually quite a big accomplishment. So congratulations to the community on that. I don't have the exact current ACPV for right now, but it's about 50 million is where we are about right now. And with all of the growth that we've got coming in this month, there's a bunch of you that are probably starting January 1, right? So, and for tax reasons, healthcare reasons, we could double that potentially. So, I mean, we've got people coming in every day. We'd like to see it double. $100 million in ACPV is one of our core targets. And again, we're going to talk in a minute about how you guys can help us get there as well, because there's some very specific strategies that we have to embrace as a community of communities. We have to kind of get over the idea that Opolis is like some B2B service provider thingy payroll company. It's not. We are a freaking employment DAO. We are a community that depends on community to build community. So we'll get into a bunch of that here in just a minute. As of right now, we've got about 400 active members. We would have a lot more if the crypto downturn hadn't happened. We've experienced higher than normal churn in the last, say, quarter. I mean, in the first 18 months of Opolis being live since like the fall, the private alpha going live in the fall of 2020, we didn't really see any churn. Now, that's because in hindsight, sort of the analysis would tell us that that's because number went up, right? Everybody was sticking around. DAOs had flush treasuries. Everybody was getting paid. Everything was good. Now we're seeing a lot of DAOs not have treasury. We're seeing a lot of DAOs not pay their people. And as a subsequent result of that, some of the folks that we've had as previous members have put their memberships on hold, or they've moved over to a coalition member, which is a non-employee, non-consumption member. So some of them have gone back to go get regular Normiland jobs. They go back to W-2s and they don't need Opolis at the moment. We have seen some folks return, but again, these are market conditions that we can't necessarily control, and they're not leaving because, yeah, I agree, they'll be back. It's the market. Let's be honest, the market sucks right now, and it's not anything anybody can do anything about. But the good news for us is, notwithstanding the market being rather terrible, again, we're growing still, which is, I think, a testament to the power of what our product is. This beautiful conglomerate of tools and resources that give independent workers normalcy. Whether you're Web 2 or Web 3, it doesn't matter. We all have the same issues. And it's a bright beacon of hope for the future of independent work wherever you happen to be. I always say that Web3 is synonymous with the future of work. So, I think whether or not people who are not working in Web3 are aware of it, or whether or not they even care about it, eventually they're going to be touching Web3 primitives and natives and being involved in work to earn, play to earn, all sorts of community vibe, income opportunities that just previously haven't existed. So now this epochs thing, let's talk about that. The epochs, if you don't know, now might be a good time during the holidays to brush up on your work rewards, tokenomics, just to understand how things work. We Mint, our inflation model is based on growth of ACPV. It's our North Star metric, right? So every 10% growth in ACPV represents a new mint or an epoch that is completed. So, for example, if we go from 50 to 55 million, I'm just giving an example. That's not the exact numbers in the tokenomics paper. But if we go from 50 to 55 million, which would represent 10% growth, we mint 5 million new tokens and distribute them based on a predetermined formula to contributors in the community. So whether you're a staker, a consumer, or a referrer of new community members, you get a pro rata allocation based on which pools you happen to be participating in. So in 2022, we've reached 15. It's a lot. It's actually quite a bit. If you do the multiplication on like the percentage of growth, you can see how that translates into essentially a year over year growth of almost 400%. It's quite a bit of growth. Now, the reason why we like this model is because if you think about the game design, there isn't any conflict. Everybody who's a work token holder wants the same thing. Anybody who's a member wants the same thing. What do we want? What's good for us? Well, growth means more profits, more sustainability, more value accrual, and more defensibility and procurement power. Everything's good, right? So anybody, whether you're a coalition member or an active employee member or whatever, you want the same thing because it creates the same thing for everyone. Now, in terms of game design, this is important to have alignment of incentives because if you look at other models, other ecosystems, you can often find and detect areas where there's conflict of interest, right? Or where there's conflict in incentives, where certain stakeholder parties or groups want different things. This is often common in Web 2 or capitalism V1, where you've got investors, for example, who want something different. They want to be highly extractive, whereas community members, or those that are more regen minded, want to be more measured on how we extract fees and how we go about doing that. So it's actually quite elegant. I mean, we took a very long time designing this, and so far it's actually worked out very, very well. All right. So if you're not familiar with our community of communities member growth strategy, I'll introduce you to it. And I'm going to emphasize how important every one of you is to our success. Now, if you think about top-down marketing strategy, corporate marketing is typically how B2B businesses grow. So if you look at SaaS models from the VC community, you'll see a very specific recipe on how they grow. They'll target Fortune 500 companies. They'll go out with a fleet of salespeople. They'll wine and dine those folks over a period of months, and they do so in a volume approach to where it's sort of the law of numbers, right? They'll yield a certain percentage of sales, and they can predict the amount of sales they're going to get based on data over time and even previous experience. Like that, there's like a recipe for this. In Web3, everything's community driven. Everything's individual driven. If you want to think about it this way, our model is B2C, because as a services DAO, as an employment DAO, as a digital employment cooperative, whatever you want to call us, as a community, we're community owned. But then how do you go distribute the product? How do you don't have we're not targeting a B, right? So there's no Fortune 500 company to go after. We're targeting your neighbors, our friends, people that work independently alongside us in Web3 or Web2 or wherever, right? Like, how do you get at those people? Well, we can't hire enough salespeople to go do that. It wouldn't work. Number two, And where do you get them? How do you find them? What are you going to cold call them at home? Sounds like a pretty terrible strategy. Annoy people on social media? Ugh, probably not. So again, back to the tokenomics, we incentivize our community to actually bring their friends. Now, whether you're a coalition group, like another community, like Shapeshift DAO or MakerDAO or Badger DAO or Main Street Phoenix, or there's a whole bunch of groups that are members of the coalition, but they're not customers, right? They believe in the future of the self-sovereign worker, but they're just really channel partners. Now, who's making referrals from those entities? If they're a DAO, they're pretty decentralized. Like, who's responsible for that? Well, it comes from the community members that are members of both organizations, right? So if you're a member of MakerDAO and you're a member of Opolis, it sort of puts you in a unique position to be an advocate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in terms of ambassadorships and making referrals via a new program called Friends Farming, et cetera, et cetera. But essentially, there's two kinds of members: employee members and coalition members. And then this partner thing over here on the right. There are times in which, and it's rare, but it does happen, that people don't want to join. But for whatever reason, they might be strategic in nature to make referrals. Okay, so they're not going to be getting work rewards because they're not members, but we might do some sort of cash compensation. We might do something else to reward them for their contribution. But yeah, so this is the way that works. Okay, so this is the high level map. Let's get down into some of the details and kind of what we're doing now to drive this virality of referral making. Okay, so to augment incentives, we've launched a basic program called Friends Farming. Okay, now what this is really, forget the cute Web3 lingo. Friends Farming is just really about amplifying your incentives to make a referral. That's it. That's all that this is. So what do you get? Or let's start with the who. Who? You. Everybody can do it. Okay, everybody knows probably 3 to 5 independent workers. And through your travels during the year, I'll bet you run into a bunch more that you'll maybe become friends with, or maybe might be in a similar situation, but everybody's got to know several people. Now, why is this important? Because if you study network effects, if you look at the 7 degrees of separation and how communities are built and how viral ideas get going, it's all by bottom-up merge and order techniques. It's all by community-driven initiatives. It's not top-down. It's not corporate sales. It's communities sharing ideas that are valuable to them. So let's say by the end of the year, let's say we're at 600 or 700 people, maybe more. How many of those people know people? Well, they do too. Everybody knows people, and the network continues to grow. So if we can activate an internal network effect where we're all intentionally top of mind, constantly thinking about making referrals, we can get to profitability in 2023. That is our main goal. Not getting to 1,000 just so we can shift governance, but getting to profitability, which is probably going to be somewhere more close to 4,000 to 5,000 people. But we can do that. It sounds crazy from an internal sales standpoint, like, oh my God, how are we going to generate all that activity? How are we going to generate all those leads? Well, the answer lies right in front of us. It's who we know. Now, what do you get? Okay, well, just for making the referral, the Opolis community is going to pay you $100 if they show up to a meeting. Just for completing the member referral meeting, which is 30 minutes, you get $100, whether or not they join. Right? Want some extra Christmas cash? Make a few referrals. Like, it's easy to do. Just got to give us a few pieces of information so we can sound intelligent. Give your friend a heads up, and that's it. We'll take care of the rest. You don't have to sell them on anything. We're just trying to get more people into the pipe. Now they'll come back to you asking for your opinion and how's it work for you and all that, and you can feel free to shill however you feel comfortable. But like at the end of the day, why wouldn't you want to share this with your friends? I mean, we're not selling some shitty freaking protein powder. We're selling an idea of self-sovereignty. We're all here in Web3 and we're moving to this future of work. Even if you're in Web2, working independently is the future. You're already living it. So why wouldn't we want to share this with our friends? I know some people are hesitant. It feels a little salesy. It feels a little like whatever. Well, I don't want to benefit. Then donate your money back to the community. I don't care. Like, you can give it back. You don't, or you can just refuse it. But like, make a referral. We need the help. Your help is what we depend upon. All right. Now, once they join, if they join, you get an extra $200. Pretty sweet. And both you and them, once they complete their first 2 payroll cycles, get a bonus of 1,000 work above and beyond whatever you earn in terms of payroll mining. And that maintains in place in perpetuity. So you don't lose, you're not losing any of your payroll mining rewards just for doing the referral anyways. But we're trying to double down, amplify, and incentivize both long-term and short-term rewards. Because if you think about it, the work rewards are really more long-term. That's long view stuff. The short-term is the immediate cash or USDC payment that you can get just for doing this. Now, if you're well connected, do the math. I mean, I don't need to do it for you. I mean, it doesn't take a genius here to add up like $300 times, 10 people is, I mean, gosh, if you know a lot of people, if you have a lot of reach, just think about it. You could do a lot, not just for yourself, but if you think about it from a game design standpoint, this helps the community a lot because every member is just an inch closer to profitability and long-term sustainability. All right, let's jump to the next slide. All right, so if you want to get going with friends farming, just go to the website, apos.co/friendsfarming. You'll click a link there. You'll sign up for the actual program, and then you can just start jamming on referrals. It's really easy. We are going to be working on enhancing. Go back real quick. Thank you. If you right now, I mean, this is obviously V1 of this program. So we are working on a bunch of things to enhance visibility, tracking referrals, like where are things, like all of that. So please be patient with us, but we're doing the best we can to get this stuff out quickly. But yeah, get going. Help us. I mean, what helps, what's good for you is good for us. This is a really beautiful example of positive sum games. And I can't emphasize this to you more, but this is the future. The way communities, networks are going to grow is by internal emergent order. It's not going to happen by core teams and top-down sales tactics. It's just not going to happen. Now, because we're participating in a sport, payroll, employment, that's rather traditional in nature in some ways from a look and feel standpoint, your inclination might not be, the first thing that you think about isn't necessarily making referrals. It's not necessarily, you don't think about Opolis necessarily as like a DAO or a quote community-owned effort, but it is. It doesn't change the fact that we have to grow from bottom up instead of top down. All right, next slide. Thank you, Eddie, for helping me out there. All right, ambassadors. So this is the next thing. So what the hell is an ambassador? Okay, and why are we doing this? All right, so why Opolis ambassadors? Okay, so there's like, every member of the Opolis Employment Commons is qualified for friends farming, right? And you can do that passively, totally part-time. Don't worry about it. Like, make one here, one there. I mean, I think a good rule of thumb is if every member could give one referral per month, I mean, we would double and triple in size like quarterly. It'd be great. But, that's our goals. That's our ask. But, think about it. Now, if you're really like, I really like the idea of this and I might even want to make a job out of this, baby. Like I have, let's say I got 250,000 followers on Twitter and like, I'm in 50 DAOs and, I'm just like, Mr. or Mrs. like, all about the next generation of work, social butterfly thing. Well, yeah, casual 250,000. You got it, Warren. Of course, that's like, you do that in your sleep, bro. I'm being a little, ridiculous with 250,000, but like, you could do this easily with 20,000 person following if you have legit followers, right? So you can actually make a job out of this. Okay. Again, do the math. If you have the reach and the time and the skills and the position, right? So if you're in a bunch of other DAOs, and you could even be earning from those DAOs doing other things, you could just make it a little bit more intentional to, from within those communities, in those Discords, in those Telegram channels, in those community calls, to promote this thing that you are a member of, right? So this thing that you're using that's helping your self-sovereignty become a reality, things that these other people believe in, other independent workers care about, and you're just basically an ambassador of the project, right? You're promoting it, evangelizing it, and showing us love. But as a user, you're not just a paid shill, you're doing it because you care about it, right? Again, alignment of incentives matters. So why we're doing it is because we can multiply our reach into these communities by deputizing our existing community in a more active way and equipping you with tools, resources, and economics to be able to do it sustainably. Who can do this? Well, anybody who's an employer coalition member can do this. And there's an application process that we have to do it. There is some training that we want you to go through that, so that there's a consistency around how we talk about the product, but it's not complicated stuff. And the bonuses are, you can actually, you can earn the same amount on the referral. So just for making the referral, and after they complete the meeting, you get $100, $200 for each join, and then $1,000 for bonus work. Now, for those that demonstrate high levels of production, we're also open to doing draws, and draws against your commissions. So if you happen to want to really double down and make this something that you want to primarily focus on, happy to chat about that. But it is a results oriented thing, right? We're incentivizing growth. Referrals lead to growth, so we're incentivizing that. But all the other activities that you do, we're not asking, anybody to be a social media jockey that doesn't turn into anything at all. What matters is that we grow. So ACPV is the North Star metric. When that grows, everybody's happy. All right, next slide. How? Go to opolis.co/ambassador. That's how you do it. Really easy stuff. We'll let you go tool around that on your own time. We'll go down to the next project here that we're launching. Influencers. Okay, so this is a little bit different. Ambassadors are more sort of like active evangelists of the project. They're, in a way, Opolis representatives. They are de facto part of the Opolis community. They're not employees. They're independent, but they are, being compensated for bringing value in a very specific way vis-a-vis referrals and ultimately new members. Now, Opolis influencers can look a bunch of different ways, but here what we're looking for is who's the Opolis influencers? They've got to have huge reach. Okay. When I say huge reach, I mean if they're a podcast, they got large listenership. If they're maybe a pop culture icon, they've got a lot of followers and, fans, friends, musicians. Now, why am I pointing to people like this? Okay. Well, guess who also works independently? Influencers do. Twitch streamers, social media people, the people that do this professionally, this is what they do. They work independently. They have various revenue streams. They actually are great candidates to Neetopolis. Now, what are we going to offer them? Well, because we can our math has led us to the conclusion that if we can get the right people with the right followings, right? Because what you really got to look at is, okay, if they've got huge reach, is this a 16-year-old TikToker that doesn't really do anything or talk to anybody that's relevant to what we're doing? Not really interested in that. But if you're talking about, I don't know, I'll use somebody ridiculous like Tony Robbins. Okay, Tony Robbins has professional people that follow him, that read his books, that go to his seminars, that are trying to do personal development and be entrepreneurs and all that. Well, guess what they are? They're all independent workers, a lot of them. Not all, but a lot. And so what we're doing is saying we want to target these vectors of aggregated communities. So again, communities of communities that we can activate this network effect through their influence, right? Now we want them to join. We don't want paid shills that aren't willing to use the product. So we are no longer going to be advertising anywhere where the people who are advertising on our behalf aren't members. Why? Because it's illegitimate, frankly. It's just paid shills. And like we don't really want that. We want authenticity. We want sincerity. The product is good. We don't need to like convince anybody the product's good. But there's a difference between selling and sharing. And what we want is for these influencers to be passionate about the future of the self-sovereign worker. Now, we're confident that once people get the product in their hands, they start using it, they'll naturally be promoters. I mean, we don't have people that say, oh, Opolis sucks because, like, yeah, being free is terrible. Having self-sovereign employment is terrible. Getting a W-2 at the end of the year and not giving up my independence is terrible. Saving money on my healthcare insurance and having better care is terrible than when I can get on the state exchange. Like, we don't have people saying that, okay? And we want to really reinforce that message with people that we partner with. So who could this be? I don't know. It could be a social media influencer. It could be your favorite chess streamer. It could be a Twitch gamer. It could be a personal development coach. It could be anybody, okay, that you feel like is one of these sort of top drawer people that has the type of following and community that would fit our vibe. All right. Now, in addition to all the other benefits, this will all be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Of course, we have to look into their communities and come to a conclusion that we feel like that they're a good fit. But we're willing to actually give these people essentially free healthcare for themselves. Now, why are we doing that? Because it takes the decision-making off the table. That's why. These people are going to go out and procure healthcare somewhere. We might as well, if we really want to get access to their influence, which I think could be incredibly powerful, we'll just give it to them. The value will multiply itself if we do this correctly. Now, in addition, they'll get the $300 for everybody that joins, but there's a cap at $1 million per year. Now, obviously, they'd have to make a lot of referrals to make $1 million per year, but I mean, there are some people that could easily do that if we got them in our network. And then plus the bonus work and the work rewards for lifetime benefit. Next slide. All right, now we're going to transition to talking about product. And I'm going to hand the microphone to Bill Oren, our head of product.
Yep. Hey, everyone. We're at the end of the year and on the product, tech, and executive team actually going through product roadmap stuff and alignment right now. So there's not many decisions that have been made. We're still very much in the discussion and planning phase, but did want to highlight and preview a few things that you all can look forward to next year. I mean, as John said, our product at its core is community. So our focus is to incentivize freelancers to join and then build our community in order to create this strong community of communities, which creates a great competitive moat, but also means that we're providing value to those members, either through discounted healthcare, the convenience of getting a W-2 at the end of the year, good payroll administration, or as you might start to see, access to exclusive deals with accounting firms or other third-party service providers. So there's a lot we want to do, a lot we want to build. We're still a startup, so we have to prioritize, but next year, you can definitely look forward to integrations with more chains. About half of our members pay for their payroll via crypto. We're on Mainnet and Polygon right now, but we are going to come to Near in Q1. You can also look forward to more token options for crypto payroll, not only new stable tokens, but we're exploring ways to accept non-stable tokens with kind of deep liquidity that are kind of reliable actors or trusted actors in the crypto payment system. As I kind of hinted at, new value added exclusive services for members. So partnering with third parties, negotiating discounts for things that freelancers need. And then obviously the big focus is also on continually improving the member and new member experience. We launched a new member onboarding experience late last month, early this month. We're going to focus a lot on tweaking that, constantly improving it so that it's easier to onboard people. We're also looking at how we can improve the member dashboard, so that we're giving you better information, easier access, easier use, so that you can, worry less about the administrative stuff and focus on your freelancing business.
Yeah, so I just want to say a couple of things about the product. And Fernando, I can answer your question about the cross-chain payroll stuff here in a minute. So it is, the actual technical product is going to be the core focus of 2023. So we've brought in a new CTO. His name is Praneeth Patola. He comes to us from HR Tech. He's actually a 2-time exit founder, as well as somebody I've known for 10 years, person of high integrity and high capability. We acknowledge and completely take responsibility for the transitions that we've had to go through in some of our stack, and that is going to be the focus. Now, to answer a couple questions in the chat here, one, yes, that is our commitment to really build a world-class user experience and product, so that the product, not just the features of the product, but the actual experience of the product in terms of usability, becomes a high piece of virality for driving membership. The reason for launching on Near, so what's happening is a bunch of different chains have DAO communities, and their people are being paid in their native tokens. So what that means is these people will be able to pay their payroll invoices for Mopolis in those native tokens. So it makes it so that they don't have to go to an exchange and go through 7 layers of the candy cane forest to figure out how to get their money to a spendable format to where they can pay their rent or something. So obviously Opolis satisfies all that. We're just adding support for those native stable coins, for example, NUSDC, in the Near ecosystem, to where somebody could just pay their invoice in that token. So we currently do this for Polygon. We may do this for some other chains as well. But again, people are participating all over Web3 in different capacities, and we're just trying to be there to support all the different flavors and varieties that exist. Question about opening the code base to the community to contribute. We've actually talked about this, Sam. There will probably be some more discussion about this in our product road mapping coming up, and how to do that effectively. There are, because of the nature of our business, there are some sensitive components to being able to do that effectively and securely, but it's definitely something that we've talked about to accelerate feature development. So keep your ears out for that.
And any thoughts or kind of improvements that people want to see on the smart contract level or the subgraph level? Those are already open source code bases. So if you want to help us think about how to connect payroll to lending or dexes or whatnot, yeah, feel free to take a look at our payroll escrow contracts and, make PRs and contributions there. We just decided to start with the smart contracts and subgraphs rather than the dashboard, because there's a lot of legacy code in the dashboard. And like John said, we have to be careful, and there is some sensitivity around the fact that the dashboard provides access to some sensitive information, private information that folks would not want out there. And we don't want to create any security risk for our members, since we're very focused on keeping your private information very private.
Yep. Okay. Now, one thing I'm just gonna mention Austin up here. Austin's got a great comment here about referral programs can have a timeshare sales MLM feeling. Well, fuck yeah, they can. And that's why I'm emphasizing that we don't want paid shills, and we're not selling something here that other people don't need. Anybody working independently can benefit from this, and it's a lifestyle thing. So it's not about oh, here's a piece of real estate, buy this condo in Cancun thingy. Yeah, I get it. It could be very schmarmy. The other point that I'll make is Well, I've been in HR tech and employment systems for 20 years. Okay. In terms of distribution and understanding sales models and how you distribute a product, yes, great products will sell themselves to a point, but until you, and they will after a certain network effect kicks in. We are not at that network effect. At some point, we're not going to have to do much of this anyways, because it's going to just, referrals will just take care of themselves. Word of mouth will be viral, but we're not there yet. So right now, it's kind of like teaching your kid to ride a bike. You got to kind of hold your hand on the back of the bike, and you got to get them to a speed and velocity where they can just go on their own. That's how we need to think about this as a community. Now, as a community member, often you're going to look to the core team and be like, okay, well, how come you're not getting more people? Let's get more people. It's the wrong way to think about it. We're in Web3. I mean, we are building a community of communities. We are building the future of work. This is an us, not them conversation. So we, as a core team, are doing everything that we can to do the things that we can, but we've got limited bandwidth. We have limited reach. There's only so much we can do. And if you look at the size and power of the community, it's orders of magnitude larger than what our core team is. So, and then over the long term, that's what we got to focus on anyways. So this is our effort to get that, call it exit velocity, that speed up to par where, okay, here's what we got to do. Now, I think delivery is everything. Quote, warning your friends about the work token stuff. Like, Web2 people don't understand any of this stuff. And that's okay. They'll understand it once we start yielding profits and people are getting distributions based on their work ownership. They'll get it. But until then, until we hit profitability, until we hit that exit velocity, again, delivery is important, how we talk about it. And I think this is why we want people who are actually using the product to be making referrals to their friends. But we're definitely sensitive to that. And as far as MLM crap, we're not doing any 7 layers of influence and who referred who and all that. It's direct one line. It's just, who did you bring in? That's it. Who did you refer? So we're trying to keep it simple. We're trying to make it as non-schmarmy as possible. But unfortunately, it's just the name of the game. There isn't going to be another way, in my mind, that's cost effective from a user and member acquisition cost standpoint to do it that isn't based on community help. There's just not a way to do it. So we can either go back to B2B selling to corporations where we can get 500 people at a time, or we can activate the network effect. It's one of the two. And I picked number 2. Yeah. Hey, good point, Sky. If I could start using only services that cooperatives and I earn ownership in, I do this for all services. And in fact, I will predict right now, and I've said this many times, so this isn't the first time I've said it, but I think most commercial experiences that you have in the future will be like this. We're just breaking the seal. So most people aren't used to this, and that's okay. They've maybe experienced things like REI, which are, a good example of a cooperative community that, around camping gear and stuff. But for core services, like what we're doing for employment, healthcare, this is going to be the future. Why would you do anything and pay for it when you can essentially get equity for just consuming the services? It's no longer a cost. It's a benefit for doing it. You might even get paid in the end to use the service, net positive instead of actually any cash outlay. In fact, that's entirely possible and should be common for early adopters. So enough on that subject. If you have more questions or comments, just type them in the chat. It'd be great. Next slide, Eddie. All right, governance. So Bill, do you want to take this one too? And I'll give a little color to kind of intro here. All right, so it's very important to us that the community have a say in where the product goes, and very specifically around core features, especially things like healthcare plans and additions or subtractions or We did send out a survey to signal community sentiment around quality versus value in terms of like current health choices. And we implemented those changes based on the signal that we got, although it wasn't a formal governance decision, it's more of an informal survey. We care about that. And the direction is it's baked into the bylaws that the governance will start to migrate to the community at 1,000 members. Now, we have a working group right now that Bill Warren's leading from the Board of Stewards, and we're in the midstream in figuring out kind of what phase one or V1 of the community governance is going to look like. So Bill, go ahead and kind of give us the high level top down on that.
Yeah, so like John said, this is kind of a work in progress, since we're not at 100 member or 1,000 members yet. But obviously we wanted to get ahead of that, given the growth that we're likely to see in December and January, and really start thinking about how governance will work when the Board of Stewards hands over power essentially to the employee members. So right now we've been having those initial discussions and really going through what will this post 1,000 member person world look like. We're considering whether and what the Board of Stewards looks like, what its role is in the community. We're trying to also kind of calibrate what the community would want to and should be voting on in a binding way versus what might still live with the Board of Stewards, or what kind of day-to-day thing should really not be used to bother the community and instead stick with the full-time contributors, right? You guys don't want to start voting on button colors unless you really do, in which case we can talk about that. But we're trying to create a governance experience where the items that will material affect the membership will be decided by the membership, and then the items that are kind of less material, might not affect all members or might affect some subset of members, still resides with the Board of Stewards, which is a body that will be elected by the members. And then the day-to-day stuff still lives with the full-time contributors. So, as we're working out the contours and details, we've had one guest speaker thus far, but we're open to new and more guest speakers at our Board of Stewards meetings. If anybody has any interesting experience with DAO governance, obviously we're taking lessons from what went right and wrong at places like MakerDAO, ElementFi, DAO House, Gnosis, and others. So we're really lucky to have a lot of kind of DAO experts on our Board of Stewards and in our networks, but we want to hear from more and more folks so that we can really kind of build the governance experience that you all want to have, since at the end of the day, it's a cooperative. It is owned by you. If you have thoughts or want to participate in some way, just shoot me an email at bill@opolis. The only things that we kind of have decided on prospectively or subject to member approval is that voting will be employee member only, right? These are the people that run their payroll through the system. So they certainly have the most at stake when it comes to questions about product and fees and so on. We're thinking about starting with voting based on staked work, and then weighting that quadratically, which, like Sky is saying, flattens the influence of the whales, because their additional votes cost more, so that it distributes power to a wider number of people rather than holding it with just the early folks and investors. We've seen how that works in Compound and some other communities where, let's be honest, A16Z makes the decisions because they have all the tokens. We don't want that here. That isn't in the spirit of cooperative ownership and governance. So we expect to continue these discussions through January and February, and then kind of by March, or the time that ETH Denver rolls around, have a plan that we can roll out to the membership for some discussion, and hopefully final voting on when we hit 1,000 members, so that we can adopt this and move to employee membership, or move to true employee ownership. Yeah, and like Joseph was saying, we do have good identity proofs in place. It's, fortunately, because of all the information we have to gather from our employee members, it makes Sybil attacks pretty hard. All right, so that's all I have on governance. Again, just a quick shill for if you have thoughts, if you want to get involved, if you have some interesting experience with DAO governance that you'd like to share, please shoot me an email. And also another kind of quick shill, since Josh just messaged me, if you haven't joined our Discord, please do. In our Discord, there's a product feedback section. So we're always looking to hear from our members on how to improve feedback. Just one thing, like the product feedback section is supposed to be different from the dashboard support or bug logging section. If you experience bugs, we definitely want to deal with them right away. But if you have general ideas on how to improve our product, what we could add or take away that would help your experience as a freelancer, please feel free to drop ideas in there. We really take all of the ideas submitted by our members very seriously.
So I guess we'll open up any final questions in the chat. If you want to dump them in the chat, go ahead and put them in there. Like Bill said, join the Discord, please. If you haven't done so already, there's a product feedback section. You can also connect with pretty much any of the core team there. Oh, Sam, good question. There's not a link for the influencer program yet, but you can email influencers@opolis.co, I think is the email for that. Yeah, influencers@opolis.co. So our community team will be managing that. So yeah, please send it there. We are working on an actual form for that referral, but that one's a little bit more in depth. Of course, there's like a lot more conversation that needs to happen. So feel free to email us and we'll get in touch with you. Thank you, Sam. Any other questions?
Feel free to unmute and ask questions if you got them.
Yep. If you don't have any more questions, we'll just give it another minute or so. If you come up with any, if not, then we'll adjourn. And in the meantime, much appreciation for your attendance and your contribution to the Opolis community. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We look forward to a banner 2023 with everybody and making this thing really take off. So we appreciate you, as I said, and we'll talk soon. GN, everybody.